Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the video. We're going to be discussing Xbox One's resolution issues. Now, there have been recent movements on the fact that both Xbox One's Call of Duty Ghosts as well as Titanfall are going to be running in 720p. And we're going to be going into specifically the rumours behind that and also the reasons the developers believe that we're having problems. So, we're going to start with Call of Duty to begin with. Now, it starts off because of a poster named Mortimer, famous Mortimer, and he said, looking for another source before I break NeoGAF, which is the place where a lot of this is taking place, although some of it's also on Twitter and some other websites. We'll go into that in just a moment. And then he said that it also needs to be double-checked. He doesn't want to, he wants to make sure he's not spreading hearsay. So what happened then is that someone else by the name of Thuway, that's T-H-U Way, posted and said 720p a bunch of times in the post, and then MS done goofed. Then another developer, these have been people who have basically been vetted to be developers, although they're being left to be anonymous for obvious reasons for NDA and so on. But Pro Elite has said, given the choice between 720p COD and an Xbox One that crashes/hangs once per user session, plus flaky ass multiplayer, I think 720p COD is the lesser of two evils. And then a moderator starts to speak about this in PM, and we don't have those PMs, and then he says basically, I'm out. He closes the Fallout shelter. He says, yeah, I'm done. I'm not getting involved. He basically says, and I quote, I think you're on your own, I've got a family to look after and only so many canned goods to go round, and otherwise he's basically going in the Fallout shelter. He knows the thing's just going to go crazy on this, so he's pretty much confirming it. Meanwhile, Albert Pinello went to Twitter, and he said, I've seen Call of Duty Ghosts running on the X1 and it looks FN amazing. Wait for real footage and then judge for yourself. Meanwhile, Call of Duty Ghosts, the developers have stated, they've confirmed this on Twitter. This isn't hearsay, this is what they've confirmed. They have said that the PS4 version is what they've been showing in most of the conferences. There has been a little bit of PC footage, but they have been showing 1080p PlayStation 4 footage. Now remember, we know from back at E3, way back when, back in the times of the cavemen and all, that there were previous rumours, and those previous rumours were stating that the PlayStation 4, and basically how these rumours come about was developers were speaking amongst themselves, and a couple of indie developers decided basically to let the cat out of the bag. Once again, I'm not saying this is 100% true, but it seems pretty likely. Basically, they got Call of Duty Ghosts running on the PlayStation 4 very quickly, within just a couple of weeks, at 1080p, at 60 frames a second at a decent frame rate. I'm not going to include PC stuff in here because it's just, unfair. We're discussing the PS4 and Xbox One. And then they did exactly the same thing for the Xbox One. They tried to get it working, but they basically found that the frame rate was so low, it was, 20 frames a second or below, and that took them 3 months without optimizations. Now, this is where it starts to go really interesting. Another user, he is known as Cboats. Now, Cboats speaks in very broken English, and it sounds a bit weird, but a lot of his predictions on stuff has come true. Some people are saying he's a Microsoft insider, other people say he's just lucky. I'm not going to make the judgment call either way, but he said, and I quote, we already know Titanfall Also. This is basically in regards to Albert Pinello, because Albert Pinello has said that they don't know what the resolution is. He doesn't know what the resolution is for Titanfall or Call of Duty. However, Cboats responds to him and said, we already do know Titanfall Also. It's not called to hold back on stuff. We already know about the truth, even if it's your job to obfuscate. Sorry, he speaks in such broken English, it's kind of like very difficult to actually read it sometimes. Transparency is better when dealing with this position. Anyway, whatever though. So, yeah. Okay, so we've got some theories. So where's the actual information on this? Okay, well, now it becomes a bit more complicated. Pretty much, there's two sources of blame for this. One, the GPU. Two, the ESRAM. Basically, 900p is 56% more pixels than 720p. You could do the maths on this, by the way. This isn't hearsay, this isn't theory, this is absolute truth. You can just times 1920 by 1080, and that gives you the amount of pixels in 1080p. Or you can times like 1600 by 900. You can times 1280 by 720, and so on. But I'm just gonna go forward. So you can either do the maths or you could just hear me out. It's completely up to you. The PlayStation 4 has an advantage of roughly 55 to 56%. Why? Well, the PlayStation 4 has 1.84 teraflops of computing power. The Xbox One has 1.18 to 1.20-ish. What? I hear you scream. That's not right. Dude, it's got 1.32. But you're forgetting something. You're forgetting that 10% of this is actually being allocated to things such as Kinect. Now, Microsoft have said, and this isn't a theory, this is what they've said in an interview, this was from Andrew Goosen, I believe, that they're trying to get more of that GPU usage back, but for now, 10% is basically allocated. So, if you figure that out, that's pretty much the difference between 720p and 900p, is literally just the GPU. But that doesn't take into account other things. For example, the extra ROPs. Now, ROPs are basically the best friends because they render the scene. They literally create the scene. And the Xbox One has half. It has 16 versus 32 ROPs. Now, theoretically, 16 should be enough for a 1080p image, but when you start adding anti-aliasing to basically smooth out the image and so on, then you start getting hiccups. So, then you've got the other option, which could be the ESRAM. Now, the Xbox One memory works in two different ways. There's the DDR3, which is 68 gigabytes per second of bandwidth. That's using 2133 megahertz DDR3 memory. Then you've got the ESRAM. Now, ESRAM is basically a very small amount of memory, 32 megs, as I said, that tries to make up for the difference. But here's the kicker. People are stating it's not enough memory for a render target of 1080p at 60 frames a second if you're dealing with things such as anti-aliasing and or complicated scenes. So the basic theory is pretty simple. The ESRAM, the 32 megabytes of ESRAM, quite simply cannot deal with that amount of data. It's just not big enough. Now, I know some people are going to start talking about things such as Forza, but Forza, from what I'm understanding, doesn't have anti-aliasing, and it also has a lot of very basic visual effects and it's most likely that this is helping to reduce the work being done. Now, a lot of titles, on the other hand, on the Xbox One, of course, aren't going through this. A lot of the titles are actually having anti-aliasing enabled. So what does this mean? Well, going forward, it's going to become a lot trickier to know, because there's three possibilities. Well, there's multiple possibilities. The first is that it's the Xbox One's hardware, right? So, in other words, the Xbox One's hardware just isn't powerful enough. The second option is that developers simply need to learn to use the hardware better. In other words, it's just trickier. The third option is that these rumors are completely false and we get titles running in a much higher resolution. And finally, the fourth option is that it's true for now, but that's because they haven't got full optimizations yet. In other words, they're still working on the actual development kit tools, and so as these become better, it will help to reduce the deficits that we're discussing. In other words, as the libraries become better. But quite a few developers are already starting to come out of the woodwork, and they're starting to point out the issues with the Xbox One's memory and the GPU. Here's the thing, this doesn't make the console a bad console for games. I want to make that clear. This isn't like a bashing Microsoft video. This is not saying that the Xbox One sucks. That's not to say that you won't enjoy the games on it, but I'm just trying to inform you guys, obviously, of the technical limitations of the machine. Now, there are possibilities in my head that, you might be able to reduce the deficit somewhat. Maybe it won't be as bad. Maybe the PlayStation 4 will have some issues as well. Especially maybe it could be CPU bound. But here's the thing. The developers have spoken a hell of a lot of the Xbox One, right? They have, and I've done analysis on it. I still need to finish that, but that's actually probably one of the reasons. If this video sounds a bit crappy in terms of quality, it's simply in terms of audio quality. It's simply because I'm pretty much sitting on the floor recording this because I've got electricians around my house recently. So basically, my recording area is completely decimated. Wires hanging out everywhere. So I've been a bit pushed for time the last week or so, but hopefully the next couple of days it'll be back to normal. But I digress. I've read a lot of interviews, I've seen a lot of interviews, I've seen Twitter, I've seen exchanges, I've seen Albert, I've seen all of these guys, and they have spoken about this heavily. Here's the problem with it. None of it has explained to me how they're going to make up such a large deficit. Even if you start taking into account that things don't scale linearly, and for the most part, I think they do scale pretty damn well, but let's even account for the fact that they don't scale well. Let's even account for the fact that, the extra GCN cores don't scale as well as what Sony claim, and in fact, Microsoft are right on that. I still don't understand how it's going to be any better than a 30 to 40% gap, because there's just too much of an advantage. Now, Microsoft have stated numerous times that the ESRAM is not very difficult to work with. They've also stated very infamous words now. It's all balanced. It's balanced around it. We've got the balance of the CUs. We've got the balance of the memory. Here's the problem, and this is the issue. I can say anything is balanced, right? I can take you to a PC that has a Pentium 2 processor that runs at 266 megahertz, and inside that glorious monstrosity of a PC is a Voodoo 2 graphics card. I can then tell you that that system is 110% balanced. There you go. Buy that system. It's amazing. It's completely balanced. The graphics card is completely balanced. The CPU. You've got 64 megabytes of RAM, so more than adequate. 100% balanced. Does it mean it's powerful? No. In other words, just because saying the components are balanced around each other doesn't really tell you anything. And this isn't arguing. This isn't coming down on one side to the other. I've been pretty critical about Sony's stuff as well, but that's for different reasons. I just don't really think Microsoft made some good decisions with the hardware. I think they really do regret the ESRAM. I honestly believe they do. Because I would. If I were Microsoft and I had chosen that hardware setup, I would regret it. They did it not because I believe they didn't do it because of malicious reasons. I don't think they were even trying to cut corners. I just think that they had this vision in their head that required a ton of memory, and they knew that they needed that memory. There was no way around it, and so they felt that the best way to achieve that was DDR3, because they didn't think they were going to get an abundance of GDDR5, which of course Sony managed to snag at the last minute. There are some rumours, and I'm not saying that these are true, I'm saying that they're rumours from supposed insiders, and I'm not, having a go at the guy. I don't know him. I don't know if he really does work for Microsoft. I don't know if he doesn't. But there are some rumours that state that the Xbox One should have been delayed for longer. And some theories were showing that it was actually going to be released next year, but Sony basically got the drop on Microsoft, and they felt that they needed to rush the launch. I don't necessarily know if I put much stock in that, but there you have it. Regardless, the Xbox One, I understand why they chose some decisions, but personally, I would have been tempted if I were Microsoft, and I don't know how far along they were in the design and how stuck with it they were, but I would have been really tempted if I were Microsoft to have bunged in, like a small amount of GDDR5 memory along with the rest of the system. But my gut feeling is they simply couldn't, because of the rest of the design of the system just wouldn't allow them to. There are some ways they maybe could have done it, but not gotten the same results that they wanted. So there you have it. Remember, they've got that coherent memory, and so I think they're kind of stuck with some issues now. Now, I'm not saying this stuff is true. I'm saying that some of it is definitely 100% true. Like the resolution, the amount of memory and so on the systems have got. This is like true. This is like something we cannot argue with. It's like saying, it's like me saying that if you put your hand on, in a campfire, it's going to burn. It's just true. But I guess we're just going to have to see. Now remember, and this is the key wording, we are very early in the hardware wars right now. The PlayStation 4 is not a magical pit of endless power, despite the fact that Mark Cerny is stating, that the PS4 is the most powerful games console ever. Trollolololol. The reality of the matter is, it has a finite amount of power as well, and it too will have these compromises in regards to resolution on some things. It's just that simple. It is not an open system. This is not being a pro PC gamer. This is just telling you guys the blunt facts. If you're a PC gamer, you can put in a new GPU. You cannot do that with a PlayStation 4. In other words, you have to start targeting the resolutions if you want to maintain better visual quality, better visual effects. The question is, if we're going to be judging this from now until, say, the end of the system's lifespans, how much is that decisions? How much of the decisions going to affect the Xbox One? Now, once again, I'm just pointing out, the Xbox One does not mean it's a bad console. It does not mean that you're not going to have fun playing the games. It just means that there's a good likelihood that developers are going to have more difficulty getting the most out of the system, for A, and for B, internally, the games are going to be rendered at a lower resolution. Anyway, that's just about it for now. I think that's pretty much cleared everything up. I have a feeling there's going to be a crap ton more rumours in the next couple of days, and I'll try and keep on top of them. Well, with that all said, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.